the second death. You remember Revelation 20 talks about the second death? It says, those who were in the first resurrection, the second death have no power over them. And the second death was the perishing and annihilation of the soul. Okay? Now, notice the text that I have there, John 3:16 and Revelation 20:14. But John 3:16, yes, John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, so that, and when he says gave his only begotten son, so that he allowed his son to be separated from his presence and reconnected humanity to the presence of God in the resurrection of his son, so that whosoever believes in him should not what? Perish, but have eternal life. So in other words, perish means when you remain in your state of living dead. If you remain and your body, when your mortal body dies, you perish. But if you had been raised to life in the spirit, if you have been moved from death to life, if you have stepped out of death into life, as Christ says, you do not come into the judgment, then you do not perish. Right? But the second death is if you have not done that, if you have not been reconnected to God, then not you specifically, but a person who has not been connected to God, so that they receive eternal life, then they perish at the death of their biological body. Okay? And so Revelation 20 verse 14 is letting us know, Revelation 20 verse 14, that after Christ secured the first resurrection for mankind, in other words, after he made it possible for mankind to be reconnected with the Father and eternal life restored to humanity, then it says death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. Obviously, we know this is spiritual talk here. But death and hell, these were, the word hell here is Hades. That is where the dead would go to await resurrection. But now Christ has secured resurrection for humanity, so they don't need to wait for it anymore, so that death and hell is cast into the lake of fire. That is not needed anymore. Right? Because once you receive Christ and the Spirit of God and the presence of God, you already have the eternal life. You're already resurrected. So you don't need to go into the sleep of death anymore. Right? So the second death, as I said, is when the person goes through their life without being connected to eternal life. When their biological body dies, then they perish. Okay? Which is unfortunate, because Christ went through all of that to rescue the person, rescue humanity from that perishing. Okay? Just by believing and receiving, they can come into eternal life and they don't need to perish. All right?